Welcome back to WordPress Accessibility Day, everyone. I'm Kim Coleman, and I'm excited to announce our next session, my last session as your host, How We Made Joomla 4 Accessible, presented by Carlos Camara. Carlos is a web developer that specializes in Joomla, PrestaShop, WordPress, and Laravel. Carlos has been involved in the Joomla accessibility team since 2017 and was the team leader in 2020. As a developer, Carlos creates custom solutions for Joomla, PrestaShop, and WordPress. He also maintains the Joomla podcast, mastermindjoomla.com, and a PrestaShop podcast, prestaradio.com. Please feel free, like before, to add any questions for Carlos in the Q&A tab of the chat area, and we'll answer them at the end of this session. You can also use the ideas section to chat with other attendees. So without further ado, here we welcome Carlos Camara.
Thank you very much for this great presentation. I think my camera just gone. Okay. No. Oh, sorry. Well, okay. How we made Joomla 4 accessible. I'm sorry, my camera just freeze. So let's go with just with my picture. Okay. A quick outline of what we are going to see on this session. We are going to see a bit about me, although Kim just made a great presentation, so that will be quick. We will also do a quick Joomla intro, especially for knowing what is the project and some key concepts and words that I think will be interesting. We'll see how accessibility has been into Joomla project since the beginning, but not so easy to see it, but it's been there. And we will see how we made it till Joomla 4, where one of our flagship in this release is accessibility, actually. And finally, the decisions we had to make, and we will see what's the future for Joomla. And I would like to give a piece of advice to this great community of WordPress. So, about me, I speak PrestaShop, Joomla, and a bit of WordPress. I actually then released a plugin for a customer last week, so a WordPress plugin. So I know a little bit about WordPress, but just from a developer point of view. I do not usually build websites with WordPress. Anyway, I know how to move in the WordPress administrator and some key concepts. I am not an accessibility expert either, so I don't know what I'm doing here, as I am not a WordPress expert and I am not an accessibility expert. But anyway, I'm really interested in a web for everyone. So I guess that's why I'm here. I have been involved in Joomla governance in some higher spheres like the board, the Joomla board that make decisions, and also in more practical aspects like the Joomla accessibility team. And finally, very important, I am the human of two dogs, and I just became father of my third kid, and also I like running. So maybe you may see me in any marathon at your city. So a little bit of Joomla politics or Joomla history. Joomla is actually a fork. Joomla is a fork of a content management system called Mambo, which was really popular at that point, and it was developed by an Australian company called Miro, and they decided to stop doing it open source and doing it proprietary or changing sometimes in the code. And the core developers of Mambo decided that was not the way to go, and they created this fork to have an open source content management system, because that's how they thought the web should be. Surprisingly, that move was well, and they even got a name, which is the Swahili word Joomla, which means all together or as a whole. It depends on where you look for the translation. I do not speak Swahili, so I cannot tell you for sure. Anyway, to create this or to make this happen, they created a non-profit organization called Open Source Matters. And this is the legal entity that covers Joomla in the financial aspects. It protects the Joomla copyright. And also they made some high decisions about the structure and how the project should be doing. The board of Open Source Matters is formed by four elected members: president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary, and all the working department leaders of the different working structure of Joomla. We have different departments for events. We have a department for production that is mainly the core or the code. We have a department for marketing. We have several departments, okay? And then every leader of these departments form the Open Source Matters board. Also, the departments are split or are divided in teams. For instance, the Joomla accessibility team is part of the production department. Okay. So a little bit of Joomla words. What you can see here, if you have a screen or you can see my slides, is the Joomla backend. Okay, because in Joomla we have two different applications. We have the Joomla administrator, which is what they call backend, and it's independent from the what visitors of the site see. That is the Joomla frontend. We call it frontend. Okay, so in this talk I will try to name Joomla administrator, but at some point I might say Joomla backend. So sorry for that. In Joomla we also have plugins and widgets. We call plugins, but for widgets we use the word modules. Okay, and we also have themes, and for themes we use the word templates. Okay, but it's basically it's the same. Okay, in Joomla we have a concept which is override. It's a very programming minded concept, and it means that no matter what a plugin gives you in the front end, okay, in the view, you can change it using a specific path to put your changes, and then it changes the output. You can like replace what the developer have in mind with your own code, and it will work. It's just for aesthetics. It's just for the structure, the HTML structure, and the CSS of what people see. In Joomla, Joomla is also fully featured with interesting extensions. The Joomla core has probably everything you need to create a website, a corporate website with no third-party extensions, no third-party plugins. Just with Joomla, you can develop a great website. We actually had last month a challenge in our magazine, which was how to build a website just using Joomla core without any third-party plugins. So it's something you can do, and you can do great things just using Joomla, what Joomla provides. Anyway, even so, we also have components or different extensions, components, libraries, plugins. We have third parties and other developers that provide plugins to Joomla to make it richer. Okay. Since the beginning, Joomla has had accessibility in mind. Actually, I was surprised when I started learning about this because I have been involved in Joomla, have been using Joomla since Mambo times, but when you were not aware of accessibility or other aspects, you do not pay that much attention to them. And actually, when Joomla split it from Mambo, when Joomla was started, it was basically Mambo code, and it was Joomla 1.0, and there was not that much accessibility features, just the ones that were into Mambo. The first release you can consider a Joomla 100% Joomla, more or less, is the Joomla 1.5 release, and that release introduced the Joomla core, Joomla framework, and other aspects of Joomla. And it also came with one template, one theme called Bees. This theme was a fully accessible theme. It also came with a couple of extra themes, but this one is interesting because it was a fully accessible theme by the standards we had at that moment. Interesting features it had. It provided a font size selector. It had very good contrast. At that point in Joomla 1.5, 2008, Joomla was showing all the code or creating HTML code still with some tables in it. Our theme developers were still showing tables to structure to lay out the content, but the big theme had no tables. It was a fully or very nice, great template. In my opinion, Biz has one problem that made it not everyone like it or not everyone use it. It was a very strident design. It was a very pinky, very violet, purple theme with some bees that were very nice and cartoons, but that makes people thought this is not a serious option for my website. Especially, it was a time where everyone wanted a corporate website that was great to sell or to tell how good your company was. This was not the best template for that because of this design that made some people thought it was not a serious proposal. Anyway, those developers who were aware of the accessibility features in Bith and who really had accessibility in mind when developing websites still kept using it. And I can tell you that one of the judicial systems website in Australia, I don't remember exactly which one, had exactly this template, this theme installed, and you could recognize some of the layouts and the features, but obviously it has a more sober option for colors. It was not so pinky. So it was interesting in that sense. So people could use it even though it was so strident. One interesting thing of this theme is it was plugged with overrides, like it overrided everything to make it accessible. And it was also a good experiment for theme developers to create their own versions of their themes. Anyway, as I mentioned, it was not the most popular theme for Joomla. After Joomla 1.5, we got Joomla 2.5 and Joomla 3, and those two releases came with Biz 2 and Biz 3. These Biz themes still were accessible, still were nice templates, nice themes in the sense of accessibility, but they were more boring. They were not. They abandoned the pinky theme, the pink colors, the strident colors, and they made them more sober. Anyway, there were at that point really hard or really strong internal efforts in Joomla to be compliant with AT-AG 2.0, and some people in the UX team, like Angie Radcliffe, which was the developer of the big templates, were really pushing for accessibility. One thing I have to mention about Joomla historically is that even though it was an open source system since the beginning, and actually the reason we have Joomla today is because the developers really wanted it to be open source. Historically, it's not been easy to send changes to Joomla. People who have tried or who tried to contribute in the early 2000s, at the beginning of the century, were not very welcome to make changes to the code. Only the core team in Joomla were able to make changes to the CMS. We were still using SVN. It was not easy. We had some communication. You could propose changes, but you have to send them by email. It was not like a very good way of getting new contributions to the project. So there were, in any case, some changes in the project, and at some point they decided to change that, and we moved to GitHub, and now every user of the internet can submit a pull request, and if it is good enough or if it has no problems, it solves an issue, and it's tested correctly, it can be incorporated into Joomla. There is no issue for that. Right now, the Joomla production team keeps checking all the code that is submitted into Joomla, but it's much easier to get your changes into the project. Also, this came with lots of changes in the project, and we have like lots of political changes. So at this point, at some point we started to think about Joomla 4, and I say at some point because Joomla 4 has been in development since 2013. This has been huge. I mean, it's been like more than 8 years working in Joomla 4. It means that lots of things you planned in 2013 did not even make it to 2016. It's like the standard changes. You know how the web is. So it's like everything was moved, and we changed lots of things. We made different templates, different themes. We made lots of changes. And in all this process, since 2013, we changed the structure, the political structure in Joomla, and we established the Joomla accessibility team was created in 2016. So since 2005 till 2016, we did not have any accessibility team or anyone in charge of checking accessibility into the project. We only have volunteers who wanted it to be accessible, but we didn't have an accessibility team or a team dedicated to accessibility. But since 2016 till 2019, the new created accessibility team made a huge effort in generating lots of documentation and raising issues for the new things we were developing for Joomla 4, and participating in some decisions. Before talking about the hard decisions we made, I forgot to mention in this in the introduction that Joomla had several themes for the front end, and one of them was Biz. We have talked about a lot about Biz. And for the backend, for Joomla administrator, we also have themes, and we have historically we had at least two themes for the Joomla administrator. One is the default one, which was not created or developed with accessibility in mind, and the other one, which was a simplified version of the first one, which was not fully accessible, but we like it to think it was accessible because it was simpler, you know. Anyway, it was like what we thought we had, or what we had until Joomla 4. But in Joomla 4, we did some decisions, which some of them were harder because it meant to put lots of people in the same direction. But I think we were the correct one. First of all, we do not need an accessible theme. We do not need an accessible theme for the Joomla administrator, and we do not need an accessible theme for the public path, for the default as a default theme. We need that the one administrator theme we release and the one front-end theme we release are accessible, full stop. We do not need two themes, so people can choose if they want to be accessible or if they like the other designs better. We need everything that is developed in Joomla to be accessible. So that was the first decision. We worked through having just one thing for the backend and one thing for the front end. So, and both of them, of course, accessible. So both administrator and front-end themes are right now accessible. We made them complain with WCAG 2.1 level A, and we made it making designers, UX experts to work together with accessibility members, raising out the accessibility issues. We had lots of, I mean, this has not been a work of the accessibility team alone. We have made, we have the great contributions in the community, and that made that we can have both themes, backend and frontend, accessible in the higher standards we set. We also added some features for Joomla 4, like accessibility settings, so that when people have an account in your site, they can decide if they want to see the site in monochrome, if they want a bigger font size, a higher contrast, or highlight their links, all their links. And that is a decision they made in their account settings. So they just log in and they have all the settings they want. We also have some nice plugins like the skip to links. And this plugin allows you the skip to button. So when you are navigating a Joomla 4 website and you click the tabular key, the tab key, you see a skip to menu that automatically detects the structure of your page, your landmarks, and points you to, or allows you to jump to the landmark you choose. And also one thing that is, it's funny, we packed Joomla 4 with an overlay. I know they are very controversial, and it's okay. We agree overlays are not the need or what solve accessibility, but we also thought that overlays can help in some cases where users do not have the required ability to manage a website in or to manage the accessibility settings in their browser, or they are in a different browser. So maybe overlays can help at some point to some users. So we pack EULA with this overlay plugin, which is optional, and we actually discourage people to use it as a replacement for a fully accessible website. But in any case, we just think it might be useful at some point. Also, another thing we have been working is making or we have accomplished in EULA 4 is that right now EULA conforms ATAG 2.0, and we have made easier for people to develop accessible content. We have paid high attention to images when you need to use all descriptions. We have made all description choice a real choice for people, so that they need to specifically say, no, we do not need an alt description for this image. And if they do not provide an alt description, and they do not say that they need an alt description, they need to add an alt description. So it's like we are trying to make really easier for content editors to have a more accessible website. EULA 4 is packed with a tiny MCE editor, and we have added some nice features to make it more accessible. And finally, we have forked a couple of plugins in GitHub to provide an accessibility tester. So right now in EULA, when you are writing a post, you can click on a test accessibility button, and then you will see how accessible is the content you are writing. Actually, that accessibility tester tests your whole front end if you want. So it's really nice addition. Also in EULA 4.2, we have added keyboard shortcuts that will help people to move faster through the EULA site, make it easier to make whatever they need. And we are trying to make sure that every new addition we put into EULA is accessible. So finally, the future of EULA. We already have plans for EULA 5, but one of the biggest intention, one of our biggest goal is to audit any new addition we do into the core, so that whenever a new feature is added, we are sure that it is fully accessible. In EULA, the structure of the plugins and the plugin, when you have like lots of settings or you have to manage content in your plugins, is very standard. It's like very few people try to add their own designs, because EULA provides with an easy to use way to create their views, so they do not need to create their own views. And even though we are trying to help or to be sure that when people add new features into EULA, these are accessible. We want to keep doing improvements in the way people create content in EULA. There has been recently, we have created a new user experience team, and we have a tight connection between this team and the EULA accessibility team, so that we can well, I think from my point of view, user experience and accessibility is like is probably two sides of the same coin. You just want people to use your website in the best way possible. So it makes lots of sense to have a tight relationship between this user experience team and the accessibility team. We are committed to develop lots of lots of we are committed to develop lots of documentation focus on how to make Joomla or the content you create for Joomla or the plugins you develop for Joomla more accessible. We have a lot of that, but we need to check, edit, and publish the new documentation we have about that. So we really want to have this documentation where people know how they can create more accessible features. Also, we want to teach or keep teaching or promoting accessibility between web integrators, people who use Joomla to develop their own websites or their clients' websites. We want to keep raising the voice and making our point in accessibility so that they are aware that they need to be to have accessibility in mind when developing our website. And since till right now we have focused on making Joomla accessible for people who visit the website. We have also made it so that Joomla can be used to develop this accessible content. We have made it so that Joomla can be used by everyone to create content, so it's accessible to create content. And now we really want to make it Joomla easier to code by people, I mean, in accessible way. For instance, I don't know, we recently abide to PSR 12, but PSR 12 is using tabs instead of spaces, or maybe we need to change that because when you are programming, spaces are more accessible than tabs. But we really need to check on that and make it even easier to contribute for everyone because as we've had in our as we have in our name, Joomla is all together, and all together means that everyone needs to be able to create content, to access the content, and also to develop the tools that the content that you are using to write the content. Finally, I want to show you a little piece of advice. And wait, here. Okay. I got the title of this slide with a Spanish saying, and it's in Spanish. Well, I will just say the translation. I sell tips, and for me, I don't have. So in English, you would translate it as do as I say and not as I do. You know, Joomla community is it's a community. I'm not that into a WordPress community, so I cannot speak about your community. But in Joomla, we fight. We fight a lot, verbally. We are not. Luckily, we have not physical violence yet. But we have issues as in any community. We also have tried to solve these issues, but even so, it's hard to keep this community. But that does not should not make you to stop contributing because people have bad days every day. So someone tell you something in a different tone that you were expecting, and then you got discouraged. That is not great. So please keep contributing with accessibility. Also, everything you get new into WordPress, test it. Test it with accessibility in mind. You cannot probably make the perfect test, and you might oversee something, but you can test it. WordPress is also open source. It's free software, so you can check the new code, test it, and raise the issue so that it can be fixed. And also you have these great events like the Contributors Day where you can work on this kind of stuff. So test any new addition and try to not accept or be very not allow any new integration into WordPress that is not accessible, because everything developed for a content management system nowadays should be made with accessibility in mind. So please keep doing that. Also, this event is great. It's huge. Keep promoting and teaching accessibility. Yesterday I was speaking with a friend who a developer friend who was not aware of how obfuscating links is bad for accessibility, or how bad it is to have bad contrast. I keep having clients who, in their brand design system, have inaccessible colors, so color combinations. So keep promoting and teaching accessibility for everyone, for developers, for designers, for people writing content, for everyone. Also, do not allow commercial interest to disrupt your tools. I know that at some point we, as a community, do not have that much strength, but please keep fighting against those decisions that make your system inaccessible. WordPress, I think, has more than 40% of the web, or 30% of the web is developed on WordPress. You do have a responsibility on what is happening. So at least when something is introduced that is not accessible, just rest assured that you have fight against that. So that is what I think you at least you could do, or what I it's not what they think you can do, it's just what they would hope for me to do if I were in this community. Uh, and finally, aim for more. There is not a way or a place where you can say WordPress is fully accessible, because it is not. There are always issues, and when working in accessibility, some stuff that is working fine for some users, for other users is a problem because it's making them a more painful process. So just try to always keep vigilant and aim for more accessible website and more accessible content. And that's all I have. So a big thank you to all of you. A big thank you for the organization who allowed me to give this talk. And a big thank you for all these communities. I have been involved in my local community in WordPress, and everything is great. So thank you very much for everyone who attended this talk to learn a bit more about how we did in Joomla to make it accessible.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Yes, the WordPress community also fights, and we also need to look out for commercial interests. So your last slide absolutely hit all the marks for the WordPress community as well. So I really appreciate that. If you're watching live and you have questions, you can put them into the Q&A section in the chat area. I have a couple to start with. First, Carlos, because your camera's frozen, just give me like a heads up or say like, okay, to switch back and forth so I don't cut you off when you're responding. Amber asks about your accessibility tester, the JAT, that's built in with Joomla. Can you talk more about what it checks for and what the reports look like and how you've improved it over time?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. Jolly, Joomla. Well, Jolly is, we call it Jolly because, well, it's a pun between the letters Joomla and let me go here to check it, because I think we have a link here. It's between Joomla and Ali, which is the. We don't have Ali here. Okay. Let me check that. Here it is. Joomla accessibility checker. Yeah, here it is. Okay. If you can see my screen, this is basically, it's an overlay, but it's not intended for your users. It's intended just for you as checker of the content. When you load the, I think we have a demo here. Not sure if it is working. No. Well, this was a project. Here, examples. Okay, here. This is basically how as it works. This was a GitHub project we found. It was an accessibility checker by JavaScript, and we contributed to it so that we removed the jQuery dependence of the project, and then we incorporated it into Joomla. We obviously we contributed back these features to the author. Okay, I don't know if he added them to the project, but actually when it was good enough, we introduced it. Whenever you load your article, the preview of your article, this overlay loads here and it informs you of the accessibility errors you can see. It checks, actually, I mean, it's an automated test, so you can expect as much as an automated test goes. But it helps you or non-savvy users to, not techie users to check the accessibility more or less easily. At least the basic accessibility. Here we have that the taxonomy evolution is strong. It has, or we have different issues. When you hover over the danger icon, you see the image is being used as a link with surrounding text, although the alt attribute should be marked as the correct. Well, you have here some issues that is checking. Another one, link text may not be descriptive enough out of the context. So learn more link here is also an issue we might have when creating this content like this. The H4 in this content, non-consecutive heading level used. Heading should neither skip levels or go from heading 2 to heading 4. This plugin is only shown to, or you can configure this to be shown only to authors or people with high permissions on your site, and you can even set some configuration directly from the live test, like checking for the contrast, and then we have here a contrast issue. You can also check the form labels. I don't think we have any form here, so we can check for three levels, 3A's, conformance, or for readability. And finally, well, you can have choose high dark mode. That's another setting. So basically, this is the checker. It checks the whole page, and you can even use it when you are not in your articles. It's like you can even check a development you are doing, a website that is not about a magazine, or you are just creating a corporative website. You can use Yoali to test the accessibility, or at least the basic automated accessibility that it can provide. So that's it, I guess.
No, that's great. I think Amber was curious whether it was a developer focused tool or for the content creators. And I think we can see in this example, it's, mostly for the content creators. We have a follow-up question. How do you, as a Joomla community I think there are still extensions, almost like our plugin repository with WordPress. How do you provide documentation or any testing for the plugins and extensions that are made for Joomla? And how do you kind of enforce that and maintain the standard?
Yeah, simply we cannot. It's not that we do not want. We have made some checks about testing. Well, let me go the whole process. In Joomla, we have this extensions repository. It's the Joomla extensions directory where the users can share or they submit their plugins or their extensions. Let's go to any of these. Sure. Yeah, this. And this does not host the page. This is just like a advertisement. It's just a directory who links to the page of the author. Okay. You do not download them from Joomla. You download from the author page. So this is just like an advertisement, between quotes, for these extensions. It's like you need an extension and you can find here whatever you need, and then you check with the author. In any case, every extensions in this directory need to be or must be free software compatible with GPL, exactly as you do in WordPress. In WordPress, I think you have higher requirements because you also need the developer to upload the plugin to the ESPN or to your ESPN and other stuff. In Joomla, we do not do that, but we do check that the plugin is GPL. And also, we do some basic tests, most of them automated, and this test checks for basic security. We check that the extensions do not load external content without checking that, and we do some basic checks. But we cannot check accessibility because, as you know, accessibility is not something you can test automatically so easy. We had some plans, or we have some ideas of introducing Yoali into the testing process, because we could use Yoali to test this the extensions and the result of the extensions. But the problem with these Joomla extensions is that some of them are very complex and they generate lots of different views. So it's not so easy to check. So we are discussing how we could make it so that people can, I don't know, provide some extension or some accessibility manifest or declaration. We do not have a themes directory. I don't know. I think WordPress have a theme directory, but we do not have it. So in that sense, that is probably the most critical part regarding accessibility. We cannot check anything. I guess that is.
No, totally. Yeah. I would think that the community's focus on accessibility in general, might imply that the extensions themselves carry through that same, spirit and focus. So to that end, could you speak to how the focus on accessibility from Joomla from such an early start? You said that it's always been a focus. How do you think that's contributed to the success and the public opinion of the CMS?
Well, to be honest, my thoughts about accessibility, or my impression about how accessibility has helped Joomla historically is not that much, because I don't think people were, or developers were, interested in accessibility. For me, those involved in accessibility in Joomla since 2005 are heroes, are complete heroes, because they were like fighting against the sea and against everything that was there. So for me, they are really heroes, real heroes, and I think at that moment it was not it was something extra that Joomla had, and some people who were developing websites for public institutions or public organizations, they might need it, and then they started looking into that. There are some theme providers for Joomla that are focused, or they have some accessible themes, and that is great. But there are also not that many, so it's a pity. But commercially, I don't think accessibility has helped in any sense. Said so, I think that right now accessibility is in focus. I mean, we are uh, big organizations like WC and all these accessibility organizations are working so that the web is more accessible. We have uh, every month we have an accessibility legal case where someone has to pay lots of money because their website was not accessible. And I hope that accessibility is something that we can uh, we can demand for everyone in the future, and obviously for Joomla and for WordPress and Drupal and PrestaShop and all this stuff.
Oh, I love that. I love that. We have one quick question. If you could speak to it quickly, how do people get in touch and get involved in the Joomla community? We know where we do this with WordPress, but if you're having an issue with your files or your website or things like that, what are the best ways to get involved in immersed in the Joomla community?
Well, I think one of the best options, if you are having an issue with Joomla, I think the best option is going to the forum. You go to joomla.org and you will see this a nice top menu, and one of the entries is community and support. And under that community and support menu entry, you can see some sub-menus, and one of them is the forum where you can request help or search for help. If you are looking for a more professional help, you can go to the service providers directory under the same menu. And also, if you just want to help or start contributing to a Joomla project, you can go to the volunteers portal, which is also under the community and support menu. So it's like
Perfect.
I will go to that community and support menu, and I think it's everything we need. Also, we are this year we were honored with the Google Summer of Code contribution or project, and we had some students working for to develop some features for Joomla, and that's an also a good way of starting to contribute to Joomla, because you get all the benefits of the Google Summer of Code. So if you want to get involved into accessibility, we usually try to have an accessibility project in our Google Summer of Code project. So that's
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Carlos. We have to end it here. I hope everyone enjoyed this session. You can continue chatting or using our hashtags on social media. Provide feedback at wpaccessibility.day. Get a free T-shirt. I'm checking out as host. We have Devin Egger coming up next with a presentation on boosting up conversions with accessible e-commerce at 12 UTC. While you're waiting, grab some swag at the sponsor pages. Enter to win great prizes, and we'll see you here after the break.